is going on, everyone? It is time for my film reveal video from my fall trip to Zion. I started doing this many years ago as a way of kind of recording my first impression when looking at the film. Also, it's kind of a cool learning tool, so I'm sure there'll be some photos that turned out good, some that turned out horrible, and sort of give you some of the backstory and some of the stuff that doesn't quite make some of the video journals. So let's start with the color negative. I have one sheet of Ektar, which is this one right here. And it's gonna read properly this way. So this was a maple forest that I photographed on my second full day there. And it's a pretty chaotic scene. It'll be interesting to see the color one. It looks like I have a good exposure on the color negative here, but basically I'm looking down a slope and have this canopy of all these kind of cool colors, you know, greens, reds, yellows. And for this one, as far as composition, I mean, there's all kinds of chaos here, some like broken branches and stuff, but I just want to make sure I had this area right here where I can kind of ground that foreground tree. I focused about a third of the way in and just stopped down to f45. And looks like sharpness is good where it needs to be. Looks like I'm kind of critically sharp in through about here, which covers kind of a lot of that stuff. But it'll be interesting to see the slide version of this one as well, but at least I know that I have something to work with for the color negative. All right, so now let's take a look at the slide film and see how that turned out. Well, that's kind of cool. I mean, literally, it's quite cool in terms of being rather bluish, which I kind of knew was going to happen. I was in kind of a soft reflected light, and I placed this leaf right here. I was kind of careful about where I placed it, and a tricky photo because I had the camera angled downward, and sharpness looks quite good throughout. When I placed the leaf, I found kind of a non-perfect leaf, something that had some little areas that kind of got notched out there a little bit. I could probably stand to warm that one up a little bit. I think it'll pull out some of the warm tones that are kind of hidden in here. But I really like just the linear aspect of this, and I can never pass up a good intimate landscape. So it's kind of interesting because on the light box here, it looks darn near 3D. I think it's because of the light quality, the subtle glow, the warm versus the cool tones. But I like that. I think it's kind of cool. All right, next up, this was kind of a experimental shot, which I'm not digging all that much. I think this is my before the glow really started happening sort of shot. But I saw all these branches in here. I know that in the past when I photographed mostly barren trees, just a little bit of color on it is kind of cool, but I think this guy's drawing a little too much attention and these guys are a little too far apart. In terms of sharpness, it's very sharp where it needs to be. But we'll see how the photo a little later on with the glow turned out. But at this point, I'm not thoroughly in love with the shot. But that's why we experiment. Here's my second exposure of that scene. Another thing too I'll mention is I had to add an extra stop of exposure to this because I racked my bellows out really far. And I typically take a tape measure with me, and I forgot to bring that this year. So I had to sort of go based on the scale that's on the Arca Swiss camera, which worked out well, but at the same time I did end up buying a tape measure just so I would have that extra kind of peace of mind. But again, cool shot. Now this is interesting. This is one I had almost kind of forgotten about a little bit, but this is one of those photos that I think kind of tells a story. You got this cottonwood right here, which is a very mature cottonwood, and with time it's sort of you know, dropping some of its branches and limbs, and that's what a lot of this stuff over here is from. But I just like the fact that it's just a very honest showing of the chaos there on the floor of the canyon there in Zion. I also like the way that some of these shapes here kind of mimic those shapes there. And this is one of those quiet images I think you have to kind of look at for a while to really get a good feeling for, but I'm liking it. I used a little bit of front tilt, and as a result, this area here, the top part of the tree might be a little soft. But as far as overall sharpness, pretty sharp throughout, and a little bit of a tricky exposure, but I think I pretty well nailed it. So I like that one as well. The cool tones there, a little warmth back there. And I shot 2 exposures of this, one with a little bit of a stronger glow than another. And I don't know which one this one is. I see a little bit of glow back there, but I don't know if this is the stronger or the less strong glow. I'm tempted to say this is the stronger glow because there is some warmth back there. But we'll see. I like that. It's a photo that tells a story. So far there's 2 that I like. So here's another version of that vertical one. Again, not really in love with this shot, but it's worth a shot. It's worth a experiment. Just not quite in love with it. Okay, so here, this was my safety shot. So this is the less of a glow shot. And this is one I shot before I knew the light was gonna be at its peak. And then this is one when the glow was a little bit stronger. And you can see there's a little bit of warmth in here, kind of back there, certainly there. Those leaves back there are getting a little bit of a glow to them compared to this, which is a lot cooler. So this is my safety shot, and I like doing safety shots because it allows me to take a photo just in case the wind settles down, or in case the wind doesn't settle down. But yeah, that's cool. I like that. I think I have another of that scene too. So this is a tree that I photographed. It's right alongside the road. And I think this is the most glowy shot I have of this tree because I do see a little bit of glow on the side of these cottonwoods in the background. Couldn't really get rid of this guy. Not really super pretty looking, but it's a nice tree. I suspect that this is the photo I shot with a little bit of a stronger glow to it. The other ones I have, the other exposures of this are going to be in more of an overcast kind of light. It's okay. I kind of like what's going on here. Kind of like what's going on in here, there. I don't really like that. So this is one where maybe it'll be decent, but I think I'll have to sit on that one for a while. My first instinct isn't that it's a super awesome shot, but you never know. In terms of sharpness, it's pretty darn good. Just a little bit of wind movement in there, but not bad. Oh, that's some strong blues there. This one looks kind of 3D. So it's natural oils that are in the water, I think from the leaves as they break down. And so it's those oils that reflect a lot of blues, plus you got the sky reflecting in that. And then the light source is, there's a big sandstone cliff face that's reflecting a lot of light. And there's some weird trippy stuff going on here looking at this. Like this area here to my eye looks really three-dimensional. I think it's the warm and the cool tones they separate. But there's some trippy things going on here. I don't think that translates necessarily on the video. But I do like that. And the water was flowing. It's very, very subtle, but I can see a hint of movement within the water here versus some of the oils that are more solid. And this photo took some acrobatics in order to keep the camera nice and steady. And it looks to be quite sharp. It's kind of funny, there's a dead bug right there. I think I like it. I don't have any oil shots from design in my photos already. Another dead bug right there. Pretty cool though. Basically nailed the exposure. But that's cool, I like that. And then here is another of that scene. This one, a little bit of a glow as well. So I think the first one I looked at was probably the strongest as far as the glow. And these are all kind of slightly tricky exposures because you have some dark areas, you have some light areas, but that exposure is spot on, so that's good. And now this is gonna be my second exposure of that same scene. And I am liking that shot. I mean, it's basically the exact same thing as the other one, but again, this cool, like, three-dimensional thing is going on. When I scan it, I'm sure those blues might be a little too strong, but as you guys can see here, they are very strong blues. And what's interesting too, and I didn't really notice this at the time, the sort of pine needles, that kind of adds a nice kind of motion as it kind of moves throughout the scene. For this one, I used my 300mm lens, which is my normal lens. I overextend that, and I overextended it to about 520mm, and I had to add a stop and a half of compensation. And I went to the Walmart in Hurricane to buy a tape measure just so I can, have a little more peace of mind. And I found the only metric tape measure probably within 200 miles. But that's cool, I like that. Several keepers so far. So here is that forest scene. And actually goes this way. It's okay. I'm a little dark in some of these. Honestly, I'm not quite sure what to think. It might be just fine. It might be good. It's one of the ones where I'll have to sit on it for a while. No, I actually have good detail in the shadows. It's pretty much a perfect exposure. You end up with a little bit of a shallow depth of field, just because that's the only real way. No movements or anything. I might be okay with it. I'll have to see how this one compares to the color negative version. I feel like maybe a slight vignette, slight darkening of here will help put a little more attention in here. Maybe. The business end is certainly more over here. And by the way, for the record, I did not put that leaf there. That naturally fell there. But I definitely feel like the business end is a little bit more kind of over in here, getting that sort of canopy effect. I'm losing a little color right there. So, I don't like cropping, but maybe it's a candidate for a crop. But we'll see. All right, next up. So this is that same grove of trees. And that first photo I actually shot when I was kind of inside the grove over here. And here I'm outside the grove and it's in kind of a cool, soft reflected light. It's on a steep slope, so I get a little bit of the greens in here. But this tree right here sort of caught my eye. And it's chaos, very kind of painterly. In some ways, this is kind of more the business end. I suppose if I wanted to, could always crop like that, but sometimes a little something to ground, it's kind of nice too. Exposure's good. That's a really fun one to look at under a loop. There's lots of chaos. I am not sure what to think about this one. I think it's one I'll have to scan it and give it a little bit of time. But at least the exposure is good and the wind was calm. All right, next up is my second exposure of that scene. This one's a little brighter. I don't think I was bracketing, but maybe I was unintentionally bracketing. Again, kind of the business end is a little bit more over here. But I'm not sure what to think. I think this is one where I'll need to take a look at it once it gets scanned. We'll get a better feeling for it. Maybe if this area gets warmed up just a hair, where it kind of matches that a little bit. But interesting, definitely a matter of framing chaos. It's kind of cool, the texture down here with all these leaves and everything kind of down on the ground. I'd say it gets to be critically sharp right about here. So the foreground's a little soft, which is just fine. It's kind of by design. And all the way back to about here or so. So this whole area here and then what's in that plane is all in focus. And the exposure is getting a little hot back in here, but I have the other one to work with as well. But I'm not sure on that one. Maybe. All right, so this is a scene that I photographed the first time back in like 2011 or so. And I remember at the time when I was shooting it, there was something that was bright up in the sandstone cliff over there, which I don't see anymore. And this actually appears to be pretty decent. I think my exposure is pretty good. I'm a little hot on the exposure. It's in the realm of being just fine, but I'm just my hair bright. But actually, now that I remember it, I had two exposures to this scene. One of them, the shutter hung. So this could be that one. So maybe that's why I'm a little bit bright there. I might like it. I'm not sure. I actually happened to see the original sheet of film for the first time I shot this scene a little earlier today. And what struck me then is that there is more green grass here. Here it's more kind of yellow. So you get kind of more of a carpet of leaves. But maybe. Here's my second exposure on that scene a few shots back. And again, it's one I'm gonna have to sit on for a while. It doesn't jump out at me at first, but maybe there is something there as far as like a panoramic or something, but at the same time, I typically do like to see the trees actually rooted in the ground, and this might give it some context for it to work pretty well there. This might be a candidate where a slight vignette, just to put a little more emphasis in the middle, might help out on that one. So, kind of file that under undecided. Okay, so this is exactly what I'm talking about. So the first one of the scene that I showed you is one where my shutter hung open. So this one, it might just be fine. I'll see when I scan it, but I think I'm a little bit bright in these grasses. This one, I have a more proper exposure on them. And yeah, I have a much better exposure on the grasses. Just a hair of movement in the leaves, which is fine. It's kind of cool. It's simple, tells a little bit of a story, kind of puts emphasis on that rock there with all these trees kind of growing around it. But it's pretty cool. I definitely like the fact that, I show up in Zion and all the leaves are falling off. It kind of put a sense of pressure in my mind as far as I got to find something to shoot, and being able to return the same scene I set up to shoot like many, many years ago gave me something to get that first exposure out of the way, but that might be nice. I'm not exactly sure. At this point, I'm kind of forgetting what shots I don't have here yet. So now this is interesting. This one has more of a glow to it. Not quite sure why that is. It's a little cooler. It's a little warmer. That one's better. Well, sometimes you never know until you scan it, but I'm pretty good on those grasses. Pretty good on the leaves. This one, there's a little more warmth, so I'm kind of picking up some of these little bits of color back in there. And slight movement on some of the leaves over here, but that's just fine. But I'd say I do like that. It's nice. I always have these kind of, I always kind of question my judgment as far as exposure and all that, but typically I get it pretty good. Now this was an experimental shot. This rock right here really caught my eye. I loved all these grasses in here. And then you got this rock here, and then you got this tree in the background and kind of a soft reflected light. And I don't shoot a lot of verticals. I'll let you kind of see everything there. But this is kind of cool. Now there were some sacrifices to be made, so I had to use front tilt on this one, which typically I try to avoid doing if I have, you know, trees and stuff in the shot. So basically, plane of focus is going to connect this to this to this, because to me those were the three most important subjects. These are kind of a contributing subject, but they're not quite as important. I fully expect the trees to be sharp up to about here, and then from there up they might be a little soft, which is the case, but it looks kind of natural and fine. But for me, kind of the composition here, it just kind of shows off some of those really great elements in design. The grasses, the lichens on the rock, the trees, the glow. It kind of creates this path into the background. And when I composed this, it was a total sort of experimental shot, but I like it. I like it. It's cool. This guy's a little bit of a distraction, but you know, when you're shooting in some of these maple groves, you're gonna have all kinds of craziness, and you're always gonna have some degree of distraction. But that's cool. I only exposed one sheet of that because I didn't know what to expect. And then this is that same scene, but shot horizontal. I moved off to the side a little bit. And on this one, I kind of tucked that first tree back behind here, so you don't, because otherwise it might be a bit of a distraction if it was showing through there. So it almost seems like it's part of this tree. I shot immediately over the top of that foreground rock, and I used just a little bit of front swing to make sure I got this, this, and that all in focus. And interesting because you see kind of the slope in the background there. Also an interesting shot. That is very sharp. It's completely sharp where you need it. So this is a good example of swing. I kind of like that. Now this is the scene where Zion decided to steal my dial and my light meter. I like that. That's very calm, very quiet, very zen. It's kind of like a natural zen garden. Yeah, a lot of shots I like from this trip. To remember what's left now. Got two more left. That's right, these guys. So these are some trees that I found. And what was interesting is that they had kind of a cool color to them. They're blending in a little too much. The background's a little brighter than I want. But I like the sort of triangular shape of them. And I shot two different times kind of with and without a kind of a bigger glow going on. I'm not really in love with this shot. I don't have enough to separate the trees from the background. And composition's fine, but we'll see how the other one is. I thought that might be kind of cooler than it was, but this one's basically the same. If anything, this one's a little brighter. But yeah, I'm just not getting enough separation there. But we'll see. When I scan it, I'll darken it down a little bit. Because here's the thing, when I scan the film, well, I should say when I expose the film, I expose it about as bright as I can without blowing anything out to help preserve the shadows. And then you darken it down once you scan it, and then the color might change a little bit. But even so, I don't know that those are gonna separate enough there. I think this one looked cooler when I was looking through the viewfinder because it had a shallower depth of field. But not long after this, there was some direct sunlight hitting some of the areas, and I'm not too far from that, like right there. So we'll see. But I have plenty of shots that I really like how they turned out. So my initial reaction, I really like the feeling of this one. It's calm, it's quiet, and that really reflects the area that I shot. So that one's on my list. That one's also kind of cool too, though I'll have to see how I like this one compared to the first one I showed, but that one also turned out fine. This was probably the best of this series. That's a composition I think I'm gonna probably end up putting in a portfolio. So you got other variations of that one, but I showed you the best one. This one I'm not so sure about. I think I'll see when I scan it. See if it has a little bit more redeeming quality to it. This is one of the ones I was most interested to see, but it's kind of fallen apart over here a little bit. And like I said, the business end is kind of more over here. I already showed that one. That one's kind of cool. Got the color contrast, got the light, got the oils. So I like that one. I also like these, this series here, whichever one had the best glow on it. This kind of tells a story. It shows the sort of imperfect side, which is cool. Those shots I always like to try to find. This one I'm not fully in love with, but it's okay. And actually, now that I look at this, I realize that there's a couple sheets I don't see here. I wonder if they're packaged separately. So I had two batches of film. Huh. Weird. Maybe I have them missed here in the pile somewhere, but it was some more shots of that tree. But that being said, I'm pretty happy with what I came away with. So no real bad surprises. And now it's time to go ahead and get those scanned in so I can get a better feeling for them. And I gotta start making the video journals because you guys have already seen the story of what happened. I'm just kind of trying to figure it out right now. But I wanna thank everyone for watching, and we'll see you around next time.